Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today, last time we had the discussion of the Western views on poverty and inequality. So just for the sake of contrast, today I am going to present the Islamic views. So the duty of this ummah was to explain what is right and what is wrong to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, we have forgotten the message of Islam ourselves. It is said that Islam came as a stranger and it will become a stranger. So how can we tell other people what is right? Instead, what is happening is that we listen to wrong analysis of situation and then we accept and follow without any knowledge or awareness that these things that we are being told are against the teachings of Islam. So now the basic issue is that in pre-modern society everywhere, whether in Europe or in the rest of the world, poverty is a natural phenomena. It is not a social evil like what we think it is currently. Modern society, poverty is a social evil. It must be eradicated, eliminated. Now this is a difficult thing to understand because our understanding is based on our current situation, which is that of living in a market society where nobody cares for each other and everybody is individual, and only if you want food you have to earn it and buy it in the marketplace. This is not what an Islamic society is like, but today we have no conception of what an Islamic society is like. So then we cannot understand the Islamic view of non-poverty and inequality. It doesn't make sense to Muslims living in modern societies. So first we have to understand what a pre-modern society looks like. So start with this ayat which says that are you the one who is going to distribute the income to the people or am I? And we have made the livelihoods unequal so that people may be able to help each other. So God has created inequality and it has a useful function. So it is not necessarily true that inequality is evil, but in a market society inequality is very evil. So we have to understand how the change occurred. In traditional societies, poverty is considered to be an honorable thing and wealth is considered to be dishonorable, and people are discouraged from being greedy, from being miserly, from pursuit of wealth. And this is something which is true in all religions and cultures. Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil, and that it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. And similar statements are true in Islam also. So here richness is considered a bad thing, poverty is considered a good thing. In Christian society, monks, rahibs who were honored were the ones who took the vows of poverty. They would not have any material possessions during their life. And there's a hadith from Prophet ﷺ that keep me among the poor and raise me among the poor. And so, and this is actually what was happened. Now if you look at Muslim interpretations of this, you will see that Muslims are saying, oh, this doesn't really mean what it is saying, but it means something else, because they cannot understand that how can poverty be a good thing, because they are conditioned by modern thinking. But the fact is that Prophet ﷺ was poor all of his life. So it is said that some days he would eat and some days he would not, and for many months there would be nothing cooked in the house. So in terms of material possessions, Prophet ﷺ didn't keep much. He got a lot, but he gave it all away. So we poverty became a social problem only after the Industrial Revolution. This is very important to understand. There is many studies which show that there's a book, Idea of Poverty by Gertrude Himmelfarb, which basically discusses how poverty changed from being a natural condition accepted to a social problem during the Industrial Revolution. Karl Polanyi, in his Great Transformation, writes that in the 18th century, this question was first started to be asked, that where do the poor come from? And so why 18th century? I mean, poor have been around all the time. It is not that poverty started in 18th century, no. But poverty started to be thought of as a social problem in the 18th century, and there was a reason for this. And this is the reason that we want to understand why poverty became a social problem. So just as an example, when many people noticed that poverty is increasing and they tried to understand why this is happening, so they gave many reasons, like there was scarcity of grain, agricultural wages, high food prices, etc., etc. The point is not that these reasons have anything to do with it, but the point is that for the first time people started to think, what is the cause of poverty? Previously, it had not been a question. So the issue is that when you have a community, all people are in that community are integrated into a network of social relationships. No man is an island, no individual exists in isolation. There is mutual dependence, so everybody has his own role and function, and those people who cannot earn, the other people take care of them. And so poverty is not a problem in the sense that it is understood that some will be poor and the rest of the people have to take responsibility for those who are poor. As long as this is understood, then some people will be poor, some people will be rich, but it will not be a problem. But if communities break down, if people start becoming individuals, they have no family, they have no relatives, they have no neighbors, nobody to look after them, then if they are poor, then they are a social problem. So the question is, how did communities start to break down? So we will study, there are 4-5 sections in this paper. The first section studies, first of all, European society and the great transformation which occurred in the 16th, 17th century. European society was a religious society, and they were organized along similar patterns and ideas as Islamic societies and as Confucian societies, as in all societies across the world. This modern secular European society, which has now spread all over the world, is a new phenomena in human history. It did not exist before, and it created a new way of thinking about man, which, according to their own ideas, is very good, but actually has been a very harmful way of thinking. And in fact, that is one of Polanyi's themes, that this great transformation occurred, changed the society radically in a very bad way, and if we want to survive as human beings, we need to reverse or undo or get rid of the bad effects of this great transformation. So the first thing that we need to develop understanding is to understand that the victors of the battle tell the stories, and in these stories they are always the heroes and the champions. So this is called Eurocentric history. According to Eurocentric history, enlightenment started in Europe. All the world was in darkness, and suddenly the flame of logic and reason appeared in the West from nowhere, and then these people became the greatest people that the world has ever seen, and everybody else must now follow them in order to acquire greatness. So this is the Eurocentric history which is taught everywhere and conditions the minds of the people. So actually we have to first get to the truth, which is different from the Eurocentric history. And so basically, how did the Enlightenment start? It didn't start all by itself from nowhere. So basically you had the very advanced civilization in Andalus, which is Islamic Spain. This civilization lasted for 600 or 700 years. This is more than the entire lifespan of the European civilization today, which is about 3 centuries from their start. Now it's coming to be 4. So over a long period of time, civilizations develop and then they decline, and so basically the civilization of Spain declined, and the Europeans reconquered Spain. In 1492 the reconquest was complete, the last stronghold was taken. In this process then, the Europeans, who were basically semi-civilized barbarians, they didn't really have any culture or literature or anything, they acquired a huge amount of libraries with huge numbers of books on every topic imaginable, because there were millions of books in Al-Andalus, and the library of Cordoba was one of the wonders of the world. Then they started to process and digest these books, which was a very difficult job because it conflicted. These books had many things they didn't know anything about, and many things which conflicted with the teachings of the church. So there were 2 centuries spent in a battle between the church and science. Science was the name of these new Islamic teachings. Coming from, Islamic means just Islamic libraries there, biology and chemistry and physics and medicine, everything, the medical texts and the legal texts, Al-Qanun, which is now called canon, and the medical texts of Islamic civilization, they were used as textbooks in Europe for a century or 2. Ultimately, the Catholic Church tried to ban these teachings, and they tried to censor them and tried to control them. Every book that was published had to have the stamp of approval of the church, and so on. But eventually they could not succeed, and so in the European history you find that science and religion had a battle, and science won this battle. But this is not really the reality of what happened. So, but the Catholic Church was lost, and the non-Catholic positions became stronger, and so there was a revolt against the Catholic Church within the church itself, which led to the emergence of Protestants. And then there were very bloody battles between Protestants and Catholics, really of levels of cruelty that are unimaginable. And ultimately people got tired of religion. They're saying that this religion, it only leads to fighting, and so let's put religion aside. And that is what led to the emergence of secular thought, that the Europeans became convinced that you cannot construct a society on the basis of religion, because what happens is that one religion comes in and the other religion kills all the people from the first religion, and you keep on fighting. So let's construct a society taking religion out of the picture. This was the main idea of the secular society. By the way, it should be said that these secular people were not atheists, and they were not irreligious people. These were all religious people, but they saw that even as a religion people, if I am a Puritan, while I am in power it is fine, but when I am out of power then other people will imprison me and torture me. So it is better that we all agree to a secular platform. So one of the major results of this secularization was that the traditional view was that society is just one body. It consists of some superior parts like the head and some inferior parts like the leg, but they all work together and they have a common purpose. So this idea of society as one body was lost, because now there was many different groups with many different goals, and there was no agreement on a common purpose. So now since we are not working together for a common purpose, so how shall secular society be constructed? So now this led to a new way of thinking about, and this thinking was that let us create rules for living together. This is called the social compact. Okay, I am Christian, you are Jew, you are, basically it was all Christians. Protestant type 1, Protestant type 2, Episcopalian, Puritan, many sects of Christianity. So now we don't agree on who is God and what is the meaning of religion and what is good and what is evil and what is worship. So now one way is that everybody must agree with what I am saying, which is the standard in Christian religion. And so if you don't agree, I will kill you. So this method is not working. So let us agree to some set of rules. Let us agree to live together, and we will all follow the same rules. So now laws have a different meaning. Now laws are just by social agreement. We agree to live together by this rule, not because this is a law in the Bible. If this is a law according to religious conception, then it must be something which is sanctioned by God. That is what makes it a law. No, but now we don't have these laws because we can't agree to such laws. So instead, let us so this is called the rule of law. Laws are arbitrary and they come into enforcement because we all agree to obey the law. Otherwise, the law by itself is not something that is sacred. So this reconceptualization, the first political philosopher in Europe who understood what this meant was that he said that society is now a war of all against all. Everyone is trying to get the maximum for themselves, and life will be brutal, nasty and short unless we have a very powerful state which makes sure that all the conflicts are mediated. So notice this is one aspect of the Great Transformation. On the one hand, you have society as a body all working together, and on the other hand, you have all parts are separate and are at warring and at battle with each other. So now once you create a secular society, and this was one of the major tasks of the Enlightenment philosophers, what they were trying to do was and so political theory in the West is created on this basis and that's why we study political theory and political science. We don't understand that political science is meant to create a way for living together for a society in which everybody is at war with each other. Our political theory is very different in Islam. So now how can we make these laws? I mean, regardless, so we can't agree on goals, but we have to agree on something in order to get to the rule of law. So this means that, all right, we can't have a common goal. So what we can do is we can say that let everybody be free to pursue their own goal. This is something we can agree on. That's natural for a society. So basically at that point, two ideas which continue to be very strong in the West, freedom and wealth, these became the goals. Now freedom is not a goal and wealth is not a goal. These are all intermediate goods. In Islamic philosophy, we have the terminology, something is fi nafsehi maqsood. It is desirable for itself. Like food, you eat it because you like it, you enjoy it. It has nutritional value. But money is not desirable for itself. It is li ghayrihi. It is for the sake of something else. Money is desirable not because money is in itself desirable, but because it allows you to do something. It allows you to buy things which are desirable. Similarly, freedom is not fi nafsahi maqsood. I am free. I am free to do X, to do Y, which I would like to do. I like to do something and I don't have the freedom to do it. Then this freedom is a problem, lack of freedom, and so I should have freedom. So freedom is not itself something desirable, and wealth is not. But in a secular society, this is the only thing on which you can have agreement on. There are different groups, different people, they are pursuing different goals. So let us all agree that let everyone be free to pursue their goals, and let them have everything they need, material needs, in order to achieve those goals. So that would be wealth. So freedom and wealth went from being intermediate goods to goals themselves. And this was actually a long and slow process in which people understood that wealth is not desirable for itself and freedom is not desirable for itself, but it allows us to do what we want. But slowly this idea was lost, and ultimately today people think that freedom and wealth are themselves goals, are desirable fi nafsihi, even though this is not true. And if you think about it, you understand that it is not true. But for centuries this idea has been propagated, and so people have lost the understanding. Now the thing is that people spend their lives collecting wealth and they don't know what to do with it. I mean, the point is that you should collect wealth only if it allows you to do something which is good. And actually the studies show that just if you collect wealth, it makes you unhappy and miserable. I mean, if you give your wealth away to do something good, that makes you happy. Now, in traditional society, there are mechanisms which support the poor. There are 4 mechanisms I have listed. One of them is that the poor are dignified and they have honor. The Bible says that blessed are the meek, and it praises poverty. Islam says that true richness is the contentment of the heart. There is no shame in poverty, and it is voluntarily chosen by people that I don't want to, because life is not about possession of wealth, life is about other things. So I don't want to be busy with this dunya, I want to pursue higher goals. And so actually the creation of the university in the Islamic world was precisely for this purpose, that the pursuit of ilm is a very noble calling, and so people who want to pursue ilm, we should make them free of all other worldly needs. So the university was created where people would be isolated from the dunya, and they would be given food, and all their needs would be taken care of, so that they would be free to pursue knowledge. This was the idea of the university. Now, so one of these things is that, so the poor have dignity. This is not true in modern society. So if you are poor, you have no honor, you have no dignity. The second mechanism was compassion and generosity. People are naturally inclined to help those who are poor, those who are suffering. And generosity, giving to others, it is now being discovered, is research and happiness which was started shows that generosity makes you happy, and this is a universal invariant in all societies all over. If people give money to help others, it makes them happy. This is contrary to the teachings of economic theory. The third mechanism was that there were social institutions which were designed to help the poor. In Europe, there were church-based organizations of many types which were designed to help people who are poor. In Islamic countries, we had awqaf, which were massive organizations which took care of many different things like widows and orphans and food and education and health. The fourth thing is that there was the conception of the commons. The commons is land which is for public use. It cannot be privatized. Lakes, rivers, oceans, mountains, grazing areas. So everybody could go and collect firewood and make a living. So it was not possible to privatize. Now this was the problem, that privatization took place. I mean, there was the understanding that there are some areas which you cannot buy. You cannot buy a lake. You cannot buy natural resources. The world is actually an amana, a trust from Allah, and it belongs to all of us. In some very limited situations, Some people are allowed to have some private property. This is actually very clearly delineated in the rules. But even then, they don't have absolute right over their property. They have to share it with others as on a basis of and making sure that this is for social welfare. So, all four of these pillars of support were swept away in the great transformation that took place in Europe. This is very long and complicated, and this is not my main topic, so I'll just go very briefly over the great transformation. So Malthus said that the poor are responsible for their own condition. And why? Because they have a high birth rate. So if you are born poor, not only do you stay poor, but you increase poverty. So if you feed the poor, this will actually cause poverty to worsen, because it will lead to more creation of the poor. So this idea became popular, and when previously in England it was attempted to help the poor in an honorable way, after that the whole thinking changed, and although there were poor houses and there were places to help the poor, but they were deliberately made degrading and miserable, because the poor were responsible for their own poverty. Another maxim which was very popular, this is the beginning of the theory of marginal productivity, that if you cannot earn your living, then you don't deserve to live. This is the standard, and this was widely believed. This came to be widely believed in the post-industrial society, because earning became very important. Before that, earning was not the way. Money was not part of the mainstream. Again, generosity and compassion. It was said explicitly by many people that if you try to help the poor, you will harm them, because generosity, compassion cause damage to the poor and damage to society. Because if you made these lazy people comfortable, they will not work, and if they don't work, then nothing will get produced. Society will shut down. The new concept of property emerged in European. Previously, property was an amana, it was a social responsibility. You could not do whatever you liked with your own property, because you had to make sure that you have to respect your neighbor's right, and there were many well-defined rights. But now the new concept of private property, it belongs to me, I can do with it whatever I like. And this is something which comes on, also is given in the Quran. There's an ayat which says, O Shu'aib, does your religion command that we should leave off doing what we like with our property? This was one of the teachings of Deen, and also is current teaching of Deen, that even if you have property, your property is a trust from Allah, and it will go to someone else after you die. So you can't do whatever you like with it. You can't burn down your property because I just want to. You can use it, but you cannot damage it, harm it. And it's this concept of priority which is leading to the widespread destruction of planetary resources today, so that we are leaving nothing for the future generations. We are destroying animal species and forests and lakes and oceans and atmosphere, because we don't have the concept of amana, that this world we can take benefit from it, but we cannot destroy it. This has a trust, a gift which has been given to us. We should respect it and value it, and make sure that we deliver it to the next generation in better condition than what we received it. This idea disappeared when the private property came into existence. So one of the things which happened in the Great Transformation, caused by the Industrial Revolution, was that there was a labor market which was created, and this human beings were deprived of their dignity. Islam gives every human being a dignity. One life is worth the whole planet if you save it, and if you kill one person, it's like you have killed the whole planet. So one life is worth billions, and you cannot buy or sell lives. So how you can make a labor market is in an Islamic society is very different, because you cannot buy and sell labor. It has to be organized along different ways of thinking. If I hire you for a job, I haven't purchased you. It has to be a different type of relationship. But in capitalist labor market, it was pure purchase. Human beings were turned into commodities, and this is the line of thinking which creates human resources and human capital. All of these are, and humans are part of the machinery. Q is equal to F of K L. So L is an input into the production of wealth. This is all indignity being done to human beings. The idea that arose in the West is that value of a human life is amount of money that he earns. The present discounted value of lifetime earnings is the way the work is organized is the employer is the boss, and he can tell whatever he wants to have done to his employee. So again, this is not the way work is structured in Islamic society, but this is how it was structured in capitalist society. Production, you see, is not for service. You see, if we all get together and we have a factory which produces food, then I can think that I am serving society by producing food. But this is not how capitalist society organizes production. The production of food is just something which is being done in order to earn profits for the owner. And the person who is producing food is not producing food to serve society, he is producing food because he needs to do so to earn money, and basically he has sold his services. So whatever use the capitalist makes of the labor, it's up to him. His labor doesn't belong to himself, so the product also does not belong to him. He does not participate in the production. So this deprives labor of the meaning of work and the dignity of work. He's just doing this labor out of necessity. Labor is a disutility, as economics teaches you. If you're doing something from the love of your heart in order to help people, then obviously labor is not a disutility, it is a utility. But in the Western conception of work, labor becomes a disutility, it becomes meaningless. And lots of people, psychologists in the West, studied this problem of anomie, which started that people started having meaningless lives, and they became depressed, and they started committing suicides because they were working from morning to night at a meaningless job which has the only purpose of which is survival. So if you are working day and night only for eating bread, this is a very lowly state of existence. It's like animals. Furthermore, it was not just that, it was that creation of an economic theory which justifies this system, says that this is the best of all systems and that labor is necessary, and basically it makes laborer believes that in the necessity of his own exploitation and enslavement. So this is very important part, that you cannot allow people to see what is really happening, and you have to convince them that this is the best of all worlds and this is best for you. And you have to give them hope that if you work hard, that one day you will become a millionaire. It will never happen, but they are given movies and dramas and TVs in which they are given fantasies so they can imagine that one day I will be Rockefeller and I will rule the world, and so this makes you happy. So the poor are fed dreams of riches and made to work for a living. And it is these dreams which allow the system to continue. So how did this happen? Well, there was a social catastrophe which created poverty. And this created the labor force, which was an essential element in making the industrial revolution succeed. Machines were invented, but industrial revolution could not get underway until you had a labor force which could work those machines under miserable conditions. And this was created by the process of enclosures, where in England, due to various complicated political circumstances, the rich people basically grabbed a huge amount of land, and they basically the commons land, which was used by all people, was made into private property of the rich people. And so the poor people could not survive because they didn't have access to cut wood for a living. They didn't have access to be able to fish, hunt, even grow a little bit of vegetables for themselves, so or pick fruit. So basically this was created a massive revolution in England, in which whole villages were burnt down in order to drive people out. We have seen this happen in Islamabad also, where you go to the slums and you tear down all the houses, so all of the people suddenly become homeless, and then they have to fend for a living. This is the kind of process that took place in England when privatization took place. So there was huge numbers of people who had no place to go, who had no community. I mean, the community they had was destroyed. Nobody could help them because everybody was helpless, and they could not access the land for a living. And so this is which created poverty in a large scale. And this is what created the labor force which could work in desperate conditions in factories, because they had nothing else, no other possibilities. So that is the end of the discussion of the Great Transformation. Now what I would like to do next is to discuss what is the Islamic approach, which is based on what society was like in Europe before the Great Transformation, which society was like all over the world. So now, in the Islamic approach, we have 3 dimensions, all of which have to be taken care of. We have the spiritual dimension, which has to do with our own inside feelings. We have the social dimension, which has to do with how the society is constructed. And then we have institutional and regulation, the legal dimension, which is the main focus of the Western approach. So in Islam, we see the community as being one body, and it has a common goal. In this one body, some people will be rich, some people will be poor, but this is not a problem because the rich are supposed to take care of the poor. As Quran is full of teachings of generosity and responsibility. So by this process actually, this inequality actually binds the society together. If people are independent, if everybody can take care of himself, then he can go off and say, I don't care about society, I'm a free man. But if everybody is dependent on others, then necessarily a community will be existent. So actually the mutual dependency is improved, community is improved by the existence of inequalities. And that's what the Quranic ayat which I cited earlier said. This is the ayat, yes. So Allah Ta'ala has created inequality purposefully, and one purpose is that it makes us need one another so we can help one another. So the first dimension of Islamic approach to poverty and inequality is the spiritual dimension. And there are 4 types of training that we need. One is that, first of all, we must learn to defeat the love of wealth which is in the hearts. And instead we should have istaghna. True riches is the contentment of the heart. We should not be running after wealth. If it comes to us, that's good. If it is not with us, that's also good. This is the feeling of indifference to wealth which Islam teaches. It's difficult to do because actually both wealth and poverty are trials from Allah. This is the teaching of Islam. In the West, they think that wealth is a gift and a favor and a blessing, and poverty is a trial and a hardship and a sign of the displeasure of Allah. Because Allah doesn't like you, so He has put you into trouble, and He has taken things away from you. So Quran explicitly denies this. He says that in the Quran that when Allah Ta'ala tries him by giving him honor and gifts, then he says that, oh, my Lord has honored me. And if he is tried by, क्या आयत है वो सूरह फजर में? أما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن. So the best amount of money for a person is one that is sufficient for his needs. If you have more than that, it is a trial from Allah. If you have less than that, it is also a trial from Allah. Because then now you are in. If you have more than money than you need, and it makes you proud and arrogant, you say, I have earned this because of my own skill and capability, and I can do with it what I like to do. So Qarun was told that don't spend the money on others and don't be proud. He said, no, I don't have to do anything with this because I earned it. It belongs to me. Who can say I'm very smart and clever and I earned this because of my talent and capability? And so this is the failure in the trial of wealth. But if somebody says that this wealth has been given to me by Allah and I will share it with others, so he feels gratitude to Allah and he does with it what it is required, then it is a gift and a blessing of Allah. Same thing is true of poverty. If you are poor and because of this poverty you say, oh, I am in desperate condition, so let me violate the law of Islam and let me grab things for myself, let me steal, let me beg others. On the other hand, if you put it up with it with patience and with contentment and you are razi with the will of Allah, then it is a blessing for you. So poverty can also be a blessing. So Prophet ﷺ was offered that we can make the mountains into gold for you. He was offered wealth, so he said that no, I would rather have to eat one day and make shukr, and I would rather not eat the second day and have sabr. So both of these are blessings. Wealth is a blessing and poverty is a blessing if you succeed in the trial, and both of these are curses if you fail in that trial. So the desired condition is one of taslim. You accept whatever you have from Allah. This is Islam comes from taslim. We are surrendered to the will of Allah. If Allah Ta'ala has willed for us huge amount of wealth, we are happy with that. And if He has willed for us a life of difficulty and hardship, we are also happy with Allah for this. That this is the best thing for us. One Sahabi who was blind, he came to Prophet ﷺ and he said that, can you make dua to give me eyes? So Prophet ﷺ said that, yes, I can, but after you get this blessing, you will not be able to do the shukr that is required for this. So you are better off in your present condition because you have few nema and your the level of ibadat and shukr that is required from you is easy for you to get Jannah. But if I make dua and you get eyes and you are able to see, then you will not be able to do the level of shukr required for this, and then you will fail. So he said, okay, then let me stay in my condition. So, same lesson, that wealth is deceptive. It seems very attractive, but it is not really so. If it is gained without lusting after it, without desiring it, without pursuing it, very difficult. I've got to get wealth. If it comes with istaghna, you don't want it, but it is given to you, then it is good. It is a blessing. And similarly, another ayat in Surah Tawbah, that if all of the worldly things, your fathers, sons, your brothers, wives, tribe, wealth, merchandise, houses, if these are more dearer to you, more beloved to you than Allah Ta'ala and Allah's Messenger and the struggle for the deen, then then Allah Ta'ala does not like you, and you are among the wrongdoing. And these things that you enjoy are only temporary, and then once death comes, then you will be forced to give account for this, and it will not work. It will not be good for you. So this was the first thing. This attitude towards wealth is entirely different from the Western, of course, because the more wealth you have, the better off you have. In West, the relationship between the level of consumption and the level of money and the level of utility is monotonic. The more you have, the better you are. The less you have, the worse you are. In Islam, it is not true. There is a level of wealth which is best. Less than that is also bad, and more than that is also bad, in the sense that both are trials. So the second attitude is that we should have moderation. Wealth in the right quantity is desirable, more is not and less is not. Again, this is very different from the maximization theory of consumption. So Quran and Hadith teach us moderation. There is this ayat which is sufficient, that wear your beautiful apparel at time of place of prayer. Wear beautiful clothing. It's not saying wear ordinary clothing, wear simple clothing, wear khadar. Eat and drink, implying eat and drink good things, not just coarse bread and dal. You can eat cakes and you can eat delicious fruits and anything you like. There's no problem. But do not waste. Do not take so much in your plate that you eat and then half of it is thrown in the garbage. That is waste. So basic, there are some levels of consumption which are defined in the Sharia. There is basic needs. For that's actually farz on a man to try to acquire basic needs and to work for his own basic needs, to eat. If you cannot have enough to eat, then you can even eat pigs or haram things, that if in a case where it is necessary for survival. But this is not the level. This is not the only level which is permissible. Again, the next level is comfort, something which makes life comfortable, and this is also allowed and permissible and acceptable. And then there is even a higher level which is called tahsiniyat, which is like beautiful clothes. Now, beautiful clothes are neither necessary nor do they add to your comfort, but they just cause additional pleasure in life. This is also permissible in Islam. So there is an ayat, who has forbidden the adornment? I mean, some people who are very strict and they have this mizaj of rahbaniyat, that we will only wear very simple clothes and we will only... This is also permissible and this is also a way of living, but it is not required. And if somebody goes beyond that and he builds he builds a beautiful house and he wears beautiful clothing and he eats delicious food, this is not permissible. Nobody has forbidden this. But levels beyond this, and today we are seeing level far beyond this. You have food cooked for 100 people and you eat one person and you throw away the rest, and you do things which are complete wastes. So Qarun was warned not to flaunt his wealth before the others, not to show off. So israf and tabzir, these are forbidden. Excess, waste, luxury. So now the driver of capitalist economy is conspicuous consumption. Things are produced which are completely useless, and people consume them not because they give them any pleasure, but because to make other people envious. This is the whole goal of my driving the fastest car, the Mercedes or the Rolls Royce, is that other people say, oh, this is so expensive that I cannot buy it, and they will feel regret and envy. So otherwise there is no point in buying. If the same Rolls Royce, exact same thing, is available for $100, you will not buy it, because then everybody can buy it. So it has no value. It has value only because it's so expensive that nobody can buy it. So the Quran is very strongly against this. Qarun was ordered not to do this kind of conspicuous consumption. The Quran says that you should not take your nafs for your God, follow all your desires. In fact, it says that those who follow their desires, they will be going to Jahannam. And paradise is for those who fear God and restrict their desires. If I want to do something which is not really a good thing, and it is like consuming something to make others envious, then I should control this desire. Hadeeth says that if you get fruit to eat, then you should share with your neighbors. But if you cannot afford to do so, then you should bury the peel of the fruit so that the neighbor's children don't see it and they don't feel regretful that they got fruit and we didn't. So making other people envy your consumption is haram, prohibited. At the same time, the poor are also told that do not envy other people who are enjoying more consumption than you do. So what we have is satiation. You have a level of consumption and you are happy with this. This is a moderate level. You're not trying to maximize that. Today I had one bread, tomorrow I'll eat 2 and 3 and 4 and keep on maximizing to infinity my consumption. No. There is a level and you are happy with what you get. That's satiation. It contrasts with the non-satiation which is assumed in economic theory. And in fact, non-satiation is a very important principle. If you have satiation, then many of the mathematical theorems of economics break down. They all assume that regardless of how much you have, you want more. So as long as you want more, then all of the theorems, general equilibrium theory, they all work. But if people just have a limited number of desires, then all of the mathematical theorems of economic theory break down. The second thing is that Islam tries for equality in standards of living. So people are commanded that you should feed and clothe your servants like you do yourself. So people strive for self-sufficiency, a simple standard of living, and so this breaks down the production-consumption chains which drive capitalist economies. Now the interesting thing is that the capitalist mode of producing more and more and more and more and having conspicuous consumption, so everybody is racing to catch up to a standard of living which is always rising. So we have been told, we have been brainwashed into thinking that we should try to increase our standard of living. But actually this increasing standard of living is a self-defeating process, because this is what Easterlin's paradox shows. That you see, suppose there is a prevailing standard of living, then everybody will be happy. But now some people start to increase the standard of living. Then that will make the other people unhappy with their standard, and they will also try to increase. So everybody will increase their standard of living. Now, in order to maintain this higher standard of living, everybody has to work a lot harder previously. But there is no increase in happiness. This is the Easterlin paradox, which has been documented very extensively. So everybody worked very hard, and now to maintain this higher standard, you have to have jobs from 9 to 5 and then an evening job to make more money, because you are trying to keep up. And if you don't keep up, you will be unhappy because you are living at a lower level than your neighbors. You will be poor, and this is the social gradient problem. So you have to work harder. But if everybody worked less, everybody would be better off. And then you would have time to do the things which really bring happiness, like friendship and socialization and family. So the Easterlin, so Quran says that the earnings of this world are illusion. This is what it means, that everybody earns and earns and earns. USA has a huge standard of living relative to Cuba, but the levels of happiness in Cuba are higher than the levels of happiness in USA. So basically, money buys short-run happiness. If I give anybody 1 lakh rupees, it will make them happy, and it will. But it's only something that's a short run. It's like if I inject you with a drug, it will cause you some instant happiness. But this is not the source of happiness. Where does real happiness come from? Now, actually, after the Easterlin paradox was discovered, and Easterlin said that we have increased our standard of living by 30 times, at least our happiness should be double or maybe 10% higher. But no, it's exactly the same. So what is the point of all this struggle to increase the standard of living if happiness is not increasing? So after that, there was a whole field of research called happiness studies, which was invented, and people have done a lot of research. And one of the main and important findings is that basically happiness, long run, short run happiness you can get by eating ice cream. But long run happiness requires character. And the idea that, I eat one ice cream, it makes me happy. So if I eat 1,000 ice creams, it will make me 1,000 times. This is the paradox and illusion. That, ice cream makes you happy. Now I've discovered the formula for happiness. Just produce huge amounts of extra ice cream and feed it to everybody. This is not the formula for happiness. So wealth makes everybody happy. Everybody has problems, and if you get 1 lakh rupee, you can solve these problems temporarily in the short run. It's a short run boost for happiness. But this is not the formula for long run happiness. For long run happiness, you have to work on your character. And what are the character? Well, first, one of the things that was discovered by secular people working out of religious framework is that if you feel gratitude for what you have been given, then you will make me happy. And this is what the Quran has been and Islam has been, that those who are shakireen, if you make shukr to Allah for the blessings that you have, Allah Ta'ala will increase these blessings. And if you do kufr, that is, kufr is in the sense that, I don't have enough, I feel miserable. Scarcity thinking, exactly. This is called, I have scarcity. And actually psychologists have studied that the same amount of money and material, some people are trapped by the scarcity thinking that my problem is that I don't have enough. So these people never get out of it. No matter how much they have, they want more. And this is also said in Hadeeth. If you give man 1 value of gold, he wants the second one. If you give him 2, then he wants the third one. So regardless of whether you have $1 million, you think that I need 2 million. If you have 2 million, you think need 20 million. And everybody is comparing with those who have more. And you are never happy with what you have. On the other hand, if you have only one dry piece of bread and you make shukr to Allah that at least I have this much, then Allah Ta'ala will increase you and you will arrive at happiness. So, basically Islam teaches us some things which they are still researching and trying to find out. See, this is the problem, that the teachings of Islam are very deep and profound. But today the Muslims think that, Islam was 1400 years ago, now it needs modernization. We need to update it to bring it into the current time. So Quran, Hadith, they don't have anything to offer us for our today's problems. If I want to solve economic problems of today, I must go study Samuelson. Quran will not give me anything helpful, because how can it? It was 1400 years ago. It was meant for its own time. So there are these modernist Muslims, they say, yes, it is a good thing, but we need to update it. We need to bring it into modern times, and we need to make ijtihad in order to convert this teaching to make it relevant for today. So this is a mistake. Actually, the Quran is just as revolutionary today as it was 1400 years ago. So the third point in our spiritual training which requires us to change our attitude towards wealth, is that, so the first one was that we should be indifferent to wealth. The second one was that we should have moderation in wealth. The third one is that we should have generosity and compassion. Compassion. Wealth is given to us as a trial. And what is the trial? That you should give it to others who need. If you have more than what you need, give it to the others who have need. So for that, compassion is needed in the sense that if I feel the suffering of others, then you see, just like when I am in need, I feel pain and I am very happy if somebody helps me. So if somebody else is in need, I should feel his pain, and by helping him when he becomes happy, I should also become happy. And this is what compassion means. And generosity comes from this, that you realize that you feel the pain of others like you feel your own pain, and so you give to others, and making them happy makes you happy. And this is actually a natural characteristic of human beings. So the Quran is full of commands for generosity and charity. Allah Ta'ala commands justice, doing of good, generosity, and those who spend for the Allah, and they do not follow it up with reminders. They don't say, "Oh, look, I have given you, I am such a great man because I am giving." And they do not say, "Oh, you poor man," insult the other person in the process of giving, which both of these are very common things. Then they will receive great reward. And so there are much encouragement. Not only that, the لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Not only that you should give, but you should give the best. The thing that you love the most, you should give away. This is like minimizing utility, in the sense that the thing that you love the most, you give it away. Why? Because this is to break the love of the things in our heart. And if we do this, then this is hard to do, because the nafs is against doing this. So you notice that this is training of the nafs. People misunderstand the command of charity as being something to help the poor. Actually, it's something to help yourself. You see, if we said that give to the person who needs what he needs the most, then that is helping the poor. But no, give to him what you love the most. That doesn't look at what he is needing, but that's required for your training. So this Quran praises those who feed others while being hungry. I mean, even if you are hungry yourself, you're supposed to give others. And Quran says that he who gives from his wealth to purify himself. So this process, giving to others, is for self-purification, is for cleansing our own hearts. So this idea of giving to others is based on compassion, which means feeling for others, and this idea is missing from the economist vocabulary. It has nothing to do with the homo economicus, which is being taught in economic theory. And Rahmatul lil Alameen was sent to us as the perfect example, and his description in the Quran says that that he is full of concern for the believers, that if you suffer, then he feels it in his heart. So when Umar Farooq Radiallahu Ta'ala anhu was eating some bread which was unrefined, jaw ka atta tha, and it was very difficult to eat, it had not been strained. So people asked him that why you can afford to eat refined bread. So he said that, how can I eat this when not everybody is able to eat this? So this is this feeling that how can we eat great delicacy in Serena and spend 10,000 rupees when the waiter's child doesn't have medicine for his illness. And so this idea that all human beings are my brothers and relatives, and we should take care of them. So this is what leads to the command that they ask, what should you spend on others? Say, what is above your needs? So you are supposed to take care of your own needs, but then when you have more than that, then take care of the other people's needs. So it says that your worship is not acceptable if you eat to your full when your neighbor is hungry. And the fourth dimension of spirituality is that we honor people according to their taqwa, not according to their wealth. Again, this is a standard. In capitalist society, people are honored because of their wealth. So the more money you have, the more honor you have. So human life is not worth the value of its lifetime earnings. That's all human beings are brothers and sisters, and this is the Quran, that we have created you from a single pair of male and female. So that you may know each other, because we are all different, so we can recognize the differences, but it is not for the purpose of feeling superior to each other. And the most honorable is the one who has the most taqwa, who is the most righteous. Similarly, there is Hadeeth which says that the people who are your servants, like in a company, if you have employees, or these are all your brothers. So give them to eat what you yourself eat, and give them to wear what you yourself wear, and do not put any burden on them which exhausts them. There's a hadith that Aisha Razillah Ta'ala had a maid, Fizza. Okay, so I have discovered. So if you give them a task which is really very difficult, then you should participate in that, so that you also share the burden, because you are not unequal. This is the contrary to the Western conceptualization of work, where the boss is the boss, and now I have hired you, now you are inferior to me, you must do what I command, I don't have to listen to anything that you say. This is very different from that idea about working. All people are equal before Allah. The Prophet ﷺ was sitting in a place, and two people passed by. One of them was very respectable and wealthy and belonged to the Quraysh, and the people said, yes, he's honorable. And the other one was a poor Muslim. He had no social standing. So the Prophet ﷺ said that, no, you are wrong. The second one has the honor in the eyes of Allah, and if the first one was full of the planet was full of people like him, they would not be his equal, the equal of the second man. So the teaching of the Prophet was that honor does not come by wealth and status and social standing. So Islam teaches us to provide dignity to labor. The Prophet ﷺ kissed the hands of a laborer who had some calluses on his hands, that these are hands which have been engaged in honest work. And so the honest laborer who works for himself is actually performing a form of worship, because to provide for your own needs is required, and provide for your needs of those who depend. This is a form of worship next to the ordinary worship like Hajj, Zakat, Salat, etc. So this is also a form of worship. And workers should be treated with dignity and honor. You cannot insult your workers. Once the two of the companions went to sleep and asked their servant to prepare the food for them so that they would eat. And when he got up, then when they got up, they found that he had also fallen to sleep. So they insulted him. So the Prophet ﷺ scolded them that this is not right what you have done. Halanke, according to our understanding, the servant is not supposed to sleep while we are supposed to sleep. We can rest and relax, and he is not fully human. He can, but this is not the understanding of Islam. Imam Ghazali says that when you are giving in charity, you should not feel superior. You should feel that you are grateful that this poor person has given you the opportunity to obey Allah and to earn merit. And similarly, the second dimension. So that was the first dimension of the Islamic approach to poverty. So that was the spiritual dimension. Now the second dimension is the social dimension. So in the first level, we have our behavior as individuals should be a social behavior. Then we have communities, then we have the ummah, and then we have the mankind as a whole. So these are 4 levels at which we have socialization. And these are widening circles of social responsibilities. So at the first level, the Prophet ﷺ was sent as mercy for all mankind. Now, as an individual, we should have big hearts, and in our heart we should be able to participate in the suffering of all mankind, because this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did. So the Prophet ﷺ is the perfect example for us. So he was sent as Rahmatul lil Alameen. The Quran says that if you suffer, he feels the pain. The Quran says to Prophet ﷺ, O Prophet, will you kill yourself with sorrow if they don't believe? So that means that Prophet ﷺ's heart was full of sorrow for all mankind, not just for the Muslims. And the only responsibility for us is to convey the message in the best ways. We are not responsible to force people to become Muslims. We are not supposed to kill them or to torture them or to, in other ways, pressurize them into becoming Muslims. The Hadeeth says that the believer, the moment, loves others, and he is also loved by others. And we are supposed to argue with people who do not believe in the best ways, in a good and kind and nice way, not by insults and not by... And similarly, we are commanded not even to insult their gods, even their false gods, the Buddha, etc. We should not insult them. So, there are many characteristics which the Quran teaches us. What are the actions we need to do as individuals in order to be able to be a building block for a community. Now, exact opposite lessons are being taught in the West to these, and individuals are told that you have no responsibility to anyone else. You have no responsibility to your family. Your only responsibility is to your nafs. If something makes you happy, you should do it, and that is the good thing. And even if the whole society is against you, that is what you should do. So, this lesson is being taught. In fact, in our society, we should give to others more than the fair share. I mean, there is a fair distribution, but jhukta tolo, you should, what he deserves to get, you should give him more than that. You should try to make peace between brothers. If you are having an argument with somebody and you are right and he is wrong, you should say, sorry, I am wrong, you are right, and in order to make peace, even though you are right. And if you do that, you are promised a palace in the Jannah. As far as rights, again we have an opposite situation, opposite perspective from the Western. In the West, you have your human rights and you should try to make sure that you get them. In Islamic perspective, the rights are that I can I learned the right of my neighbor so that I can give his right. I don't demand my right from others. If I don't get rights, I am not concerned, because it is promised to me that if somebody doesn't give you your right, you will get more than that in the akhirah. So you are better off not getting your rights. And it is and again, if somebody does you harm, you should return it with the good. If somebody does harm to you, you should do a favor to him, and that will change his enmity into a friendship. So, inequality is created. The Prophet ﷺ, when he first came into Medina, he created this akhuwa, the brotherhood between the Ansar and the Muhajirin, because the Muhajirin were needy, and they had left everything, and the Ansar were settled there, so he made them into pairs, and so that created love and bond. And he says that even if you have spent all the treasure on earth, you could not have brought their hearts together. You could not have created this love. Also saying that love is more important than all of the gold on this planet. Again, a materialistic society doesn't believe this, but the fact is that the bonds of community are more precious, more valuable in our happiness than all the money in the world. So again, this inequality and poverty, this is not a damaging thing. This inequality and poverty between Ansar and Muhajirin was a source to create a community which was tied together with love, which was more precious than all the treasure in the world. So these poverty and inequality can be beneficial things, not harmful things, as the materialistic society teaches us. Now, unfortunately, our minds are shaped by European teachings, because the Europeans conquered the globe, and since they were the victors, they get to teach everybody what they want, and we study what they teach us. So now Europe teaches us about its own experience. So there was this Hobbes, that society is really war of all against all. So this is what we are trying to learn, and this is what is happening. I mean, as we absorb these lessons, we become like this, and our society is turning into a war of all against all. There's cutthroat competition. If I don't get it, you will get it, and if you're not looking, I should cut your throat, and if I'm not looking, you should cut my throat. This is what will create efficiency in our society. So these are all ridiculous ideas. But this is based on the history of Europe. In Europe, they had centuries of continuous warfare. In the 19th century, for about 100 years, European countries stopped fighting each other. Why? Because they had achieved such a lead over the rest because of continuous fighting, their skill in fighting had increased to a level which was not seen anywhere else on the planet, which was fairly peaceful. So they had gone through several military revolutions in which they learned how to fight, how to use guns, how to use many things, because continuous experience with fighting. So for 1 century they paused the fighting while they went out to conquer the rest of the globe, and they made an explicit agreement that, look, we don't need to fight each other because there's enough world to conquer. Early 20th century, about 85% of the globe was conquered, and there was no more planet to conquer. So then again they started fighting. World War I and World War II was just fight between the European powers, and it was the most destructive century on earth. So since then, there was maybe a few decades of peace. After that, the world, USA has been conducting nearly continuous wars for the past 50 years or so, 30 years maybe. And they call it the defense, even though they haven't fought a defensive war in maybe 2 centuries. So basically the wars they are fighting, there's just wars of conquest. You see something you like and you conquer it and you grab it, and it's less like theft. But this is the morality of the West. You see, if you look at the mindset of the West, it is all about warfare. If you look at their fiction, there is a novel called War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Martians come to Earth, and what do? They try to conquer the Earth. In Star Trek, you have two civilizations meet, they start fighting each other. There's this game called Civilization, in which the goal is to destroy the other civilizations. This is their understanding of civilization is that if two civilizations meet, they will try to kill each other. This is really a ridiculous thing, but this is their mindset. So even Samuel Huntington, he says, okay, now the era of the nation state is over. Nation states have played their role, and now there will be clash of civilizations. He cannot even think of the possibility that two civilizations can learn to live together in peace. They can trade. They can have intellectual exchange. This is not possible. Whenever in Star Trek you have two civilizations meet, then they start fighting each other. One will try to kill the other will try to kill. So, So in the second dimension, which is the social dimension, first we have to change our mindset as individuals to fill our hearts with mercy and compassion for all mankind, to identify with all human beings. This will lead to the building of communities. Now, there are small scale communities, there's family, there's relatives, and then there is neighbors. So there are many communities to which we belong. And Islam emphasizes all of these communities quite a lot. There is strong emphasis on family and relatives, because basically the family is where you learn all your values. The training that you receive in your family with your mother and father, this is where you learn what love means, respect, kindness, honesty, sacrifice. All of these are taught in the family or not taught in the family. But this is what shapes the character. So Islam places great emphasis on family ties and sila rahmi, the making of connections. And Prophet ﷺ was asked that about sila rahmi. He said, sila rahmi is not that if somebody is good to you, you are good back to him. That is just normal human behavior. Sila rahmi is when your neighbors treat you, your relatives treat you badly, and you return this by doing nice. They try to break their relation, and you try to make the relationship. So this is, you have to make extra efforts, not just be normal. And the most important role in the family is that of the mother, because the primary training of the child is in the hands of the mother. So there is the Hadeeth that Allah Ta'ala loves you more than 70 mothers. Now, of course, this is telling about how Allah Ta'ala loves, but there is also the indication that if you look at what kind of love there exists in the world, so the gold standard is the mother's love, because that is what Allah Ta'ala is comparing His love to. So, now the thing is that women's liberation in the West started because people were started to be valued at the amount of money they can earn. Now, so the most important job in the society is the mother's job, because if the children are all brought up well, the society will be wonderful. If the children are all brought up bad, then the society will be very bad. So now the mothers are unpaid, because this is a job which cannot be purchased. Mother's love is not something which you can purchase for money. And since the income of mother is zero for the job, so the value of the job became zero in Western society. And so the woman said that, well, since you are not going to give us any respect for this difficult job we do, then we will ask for the kind of job that you respect, which is the paid job. So that's basically how women's liberation started. The women want jobs because the society does not respect the mother. Even today in the West, if Even today in the West, if a woman is in a society and a party, and people ask, what do you do? She will be embarrassed to say that I am a mother and a housewife, because this means I do nothing. If she says, oh, I am working in a bar as a barmaid, or I am working as a sales clerk, all of these are respectable because at least it makes money. But to be a mother and a housewife, this is no respect, zero. That means you do nothing. So the most important job in society is worth zero. What happened as a result was that there was complete breakdown of family. Today, more than 50% of the children in Europe and USA are born to single mothers outside of families. Alright, now I have received a notice that, and I have another meeting to get to. So I will stop here, I think. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, but there's lots of work left. So we will finish this lecture next time.